talking to a relatively new audience. Again, show of hands, out of those 3 people who know of FLITE, how many people are members of FLITE? So I'm going to now talk to this side of the audience. Okay, well, I think then I will start. It's always good for me to gauge that because I need to have an understanding level of your understanding of who we are. FLITE are a relatively new organisation. We actually just became official in March of this year. And really, in essence, we are a group of women who, through our careers, we have experienced different scenarios. Some have been wonderfully successful, some have been challenging. And as a group of women, we have come together to try to encourage the next generation of women into tech, but also to work as peers to peers with one another to support each other through our careers. And I think on International Student Day, it's actually very relevant to be here as FLITE. Being a startup, been around since March this year, I would like to take this opportunity to give thanks to some people who are instrumental in FLITE coming around. One of those is Claire Saunders, who's on the panel today, and Claire is co-chair with myself. The other's a lady called Kirsty Ambler, who can't be here today. And the other's a gentleman called Ian Hazelwood, who actually is our marketing arm. So it's wonderful that a network of women have a thriving young male as our marketing team. And he developed our logo for us, he's developed the graphics, and then the rest of the organisation, the strategic and tactical work, he's leaving up to the women. But FLITE is essentially an organisation and a network of women. You can find us on LinkedIn. We have a website, www.weareflite.com. We have a Twitter account. And we're active at the main industry events. So your SMTAI in Chicago, we're here today. We will be at Apex. We work along 3 tier structures. So the first tier structure that we identified as being very important to FLITE was the next generation. And the next generation of women ambassadors, women leaders, we have to get in at that formative stage. So we go around primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, universities, and our main message to those establishments is one of collaboration, one of tolerance of one another, one of empathy for one another, and to teach at a very formative early development age that girls and boys can play nice together. And actually, when you take that up to the boardroom, companies that are more successful are the companies where girls and boys play nicely together. Okay? The objective of us being here today is to try to encourage you to join the other 2 structures of FLITE, where we are looking at the more college, university females when they're making their academic decisions to progress, and why STEM is important. And we bring in people like myself who have had very exciting, enthusiastic, encouraging careers in technology, and my peer group to mentor those young ladies. So we are looking for mentors. We are always looking for mentors to help the next generation. But we're looking for young female individuals who would like to be mentored. So as I say, FLITE has 3 tracks. We go out to the institutions, the educational establishments, and we coach and mentor. And then we're looking for people to be mentored, and we're looking for mentors. Okay, so if that sounds of interest, then you just speak to Claire and I after the event. Okay?
Just ever so quickly, we also are not exclusive for female members. We are looking for male mentors, and you can be a male member of FLITE.
Yep. In fact, we encourage it. And I have openly said at many of these seminars, my mentor is male, you know, and I wouldn't be where I was today, where I am today, if it hadn't been for that particular individual empowering me to try to drive my career. People often ask why we created FLITE, and the story is quite simple. The people in the audience who know me, Graham, etc., know my background, and I used to be the head of marketing for a company called Flextronics, rebranded to Flex for Europe. And within that environment, women were empowered. Women were able to achieve whatever goals they set out to achieve. At my time of resigning from Flex, there were 4 presidents, and 2 of those presidents were female. And in fact, the president that had the highest share in revenue was a female from Cork in Ireland. So geographically, we had a lot in common also. Coming out of Flextronics, Flex, and being a consultant into many organizations, decisions being made at a board level, I was actually quite shocked to see the lack of female faces in the room. I didn't see it just once, I've seen it numerous times where we were trying to make decisions, and I was looking, you know, to see if it could be a collaborative decision, but there were no females at the board level to make that type of decision. So I started to grumble about that, started to complain about that to Claire, and we are both cut from the same mold where we think, let's not complain, let's actually do something. So we now believe that we have been in this industry for longer than what we care to admit. So maybe we are able to use that to our advantage to influence others. And that's our aim and that's our objective. And we have a wonderful panel here today. So, you know, we're here with Roberta. I'm sure many of you know Roberta Foster-Smith, who's the Manager of Global Marketing and Communications for Nordson, and Roberta will tell you a little bit about herself. But we've also got a panel debate after Roberta's presentation from Ursula Werner, who's actually the board director for Zonta International. And Zonta, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Zonta, but you will be after Ursula's introduction. But they are dedicated to empowering women through service and advocacy. And then, of course, we have Claire. And if you don't know Claire, then you certainly will by the end of today. Okay? So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Roberta. And thank you again for your time.
Okay. Can you hear me? Is this good? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. It's actually really exciting to see all you out there, since I know, I think, half of you, so that's good. Not quite so nervous, but I think soon after Gayle asked me to participate in this, I actually saw a video of, I don't know why I'm going to cry, don't cry. I saw a video of the American actress Reese Witherspoon, and she was talking about what inspired her to do more, to found her own company. And what she had noticed was in movies, Hollywood movies, that at some point in it, the woman was always turning to the man and going, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And it just bothered her so much, because rarely in real life does that ever happen. It's like when there's a crisis, what happens is the woman picks up the pieces or figures out the way around it, or is the one making the accommodations to be flexible. So that has been the story of my life at working in this industry. My first Productronica 20 years ago came here. I had actually been to Germany before, so I was familiar with that part, but everything was like, it was like a whole other planet. It was very, very male-dominated. You rarely ran into women, and often they weren't friendly. And, you know, if you were at a competitive company, you treated each other competitively. and it was difficult. You also did not always get assistance from male colleagues who might introduce you to people who are more powerful, but you soldier on is what I like to say. So I think at Nordson ASYMTEK, what I've been doing is in marketing, and I love to understand how people think, and that has helped me get through this. But in recent years, I think women's participation is growing, and I think that's going to be important. And we can turn around the question of what are we going to do now to what are we going to do now? And there is an issue that's being recognized, and one of the things I see that we need to do more of as women and as men who are sympathetic to the issue and recognize the issue is that you support one another. You don't gossip, you don't bring other people down, you try to step in, lend a hand, say a kind word. And the other thing is that you can also step up. One thing I've read about has worked. I've not personally tried it yet, but if you're in a room where a discussion's going on, a woman may often make a point, and it may be ignored or glossed over. And what you can try to do is recognize that and maybe try to bring the conversation back to her point, to give her recognition, to make sure other people realize you've noticed this person saying this. And I think we have to continue to do more of that, is support one another and see how we can make our jobs easier. In marketing, there tends to be more women, probably because we are good communicators. We listen, we adapt, but it's exciting because we do have more female engineers, and I think they bring a great perspective to what's going on, and they can listen in a different way. They can bring a different perspective, and it improves the whole industry. So, if you can go forth from here and think about what are we going to do now, that only will help empower us and continue to make improvements. So, anyway.
Thank you, Roberta. I appreciate it. So we're going to move on now to the actual panel debate, which we're looking to be as interactive as possible. So if you could try to think of a little question, pop it away, and then after the panel debate, we'll get round to Q&As. But first of all, I just really would like to introduce Ursula, because I met Ursula yesterday for the first time, and to be honest, I think she's pretty phenomenal. So if you don't mind, just a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, introduce your organisation, to educate our very kind audience and the aims and objectives of your organisation.
Okay. Zonta International is an organization which leads through service and advocacy since now about 100 years. We are issuing fellowships and awards to young women from the age of 14 up to the age of where young women are already doing their PhD. We do have a fundraising income of over $5 million to spend on our international programs, which go all over the world because we are located in 67 countries. We have about 1,500 clubs, and the women there in their own countries and their own culture do their own projects. And the international projects are mostly linked to the UN, because we do have something rather special for an NGO. We do have consultative status with the UN, and we do also have it for the Council of Europe. Fact is, what we try is to empower women, to give them the space and the place which belongs to them. And this, from Asia to Europe to Russia, we have not stepped into China yet, but we are just about trying to set up a project in Jordan, and we do have clubs in the Middle East. So, you know, it is a whole thing where women engage themselves, mentor, try to help, support, sponsor, and try to make the life of women better. And we are open to male, and most males we have are in Africa. You wouldn't believe it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and I think we can agree that is quite inspirational, isn't it? So a bit of a round of applause for Ursula, because that's, and again, this is completely voluntary, and I think that's really important to highlight. The work we do in FLITE is voluntary, and this is voluntary too. So this is people giving time out of an already busy schedule to do something completely worthwhile to raise awareness. So I don't think we've got too much time left, but I think what we've achieved so far has been incredibly beneficial. But the question that we had to pose to be part of Productronica was gender disparity. And if gender disparity is so universal that we actually don't see it anymore. So what I mean by that, if it's become so much part of our norm and our culture and our day-to-day life, we don't actually physically see it. We are totally blinkered. How do we change it? So I think this is quite an interesting question coming once again to Productronica or Electronica as you walk in, and there's a sea of men in either black, grey or navy blue suits, apart from Kim, who wore a check suit. And we did see Kim. We did manage to notice Kim because of that controversial dress sense. If we don't see it, how do we go about achieving gender parity? Ursula, as someone who's not from this industry, could you take the first? What were your impressions entering the floor?
Well, fact is, I've been working in that industry in my normal job for quite a long time, and still, when I walked through the halls yesterday in the afternoon, and I came back to our point, I said, "Good heavens, how is this industry male-dominated?" And it is still so male-dominated, because the fact is, what we need is, it's not that women or girls are not interested about technique. It is just the fact that with our traditions, somehow girls always still have the tendency to do something else, to go more into nursing, into medicine, to go into languages, and somehow there is a breaking point where they stop trying to get into these technical industries. And I don't have a solution. It's just that we must keep on trying to encourage girls to also try to get educated and work in this part of the businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. And Roberta, what about yourself? This question, is gender disparity universal? Do you believe yes, no?
Yes, it is, especially in the technical industry. I used to work in the medical device manufacturing industry. Wasn't quite so bad. There were more women at the time involved in that. I think some of it comes from, in our industry, a lot of companies have been started by small teams who think well together, who think alike, and if they are tending to be alike, they're going to hire alike. They'll continue to hire alike. It isn't until they can recognize that maybe a different point of view can bring more value to what they do. I think, I'd like to highlight that we have several engineers here from Nordson Corporation, and we're doing very well. And we've also hired more women in the marketing team and in the support team, where in years past that wasn't always the case. Or they weren't recognized, they weren't given the authority. And so some of it has to come from within. You may have to speak up more. You may have to, some of us have gotten where we've gotten by being perfectionists. We have to do twice as well to go half as far. So sometimes we may be reluctant to speak up or step forward or ask to do something because we don't think we're quite qualified, or we may not do a good enough job. And that's when you have to start shaking that off. Because you often see men stepping forward to volunteer to do things, and you know they're not qualified to do it, but they're just gonna, hey, let's go for it. And I think if women started to adopt that attitude, that it may help as well.
Sure, that's great.
Another good point, I mean, you mentioned it earlier on, we do have to work harder to get to where we are. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I felt like I was one of the only women in the industry when I started. And for me, there's a lot more. There's still nowhere near enough. But everything we see at the event over the last few days, it's Smart Factory, it's Industry 4.0, everything's got to work together. So let's work together to achieve what we need to. Women's minds and brains work differently than men's. We work together. Most of us manage marriage. Or a few. But, we work together, so let's work from each other's strengths. Let's not just look at women from a marketing point of view, because we have a lot more to offer. We see the engineers, like you say here. So it's happening. We need to encourage women. We need to make sure that they don't feel threatened when they walk into an event like this, because, you jump off the train or whatever else, and you are noticeable. And it's quite challenging. And something like FLITE, and to encourage members of FLITE, it not only gives you the opportunity to have another person that you can link in with. We have discussions, we have debates, and we're here to support. But yeah, let's work more smart. Let's bring the female-male thing into the Smart Factory.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. And Claire and I had an event in the UK, and actually one of our FLITE members found it quite daunting coming into that event. So, we went to the door and championed that person through the door, because if you come into something like this for the first time, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's from every aspect, it's from every walk of life, and it's from every area in business that FLITE tries to walk with you. What I wanted to say, and this is coming off of Roberta's presentation, okay, if we're now going to mirror Reese Witherspoon, so what is next? What do we do now?
When we say what can we do, it's not what can we do, let's panic. It's what can we do, let's work out a solution. My husband's in the audience, so I'm going to be careful, but I've lost my phone. It must be a million times a day. My phone, but who deals with it? It's every day. We find solutions. Our brains work slightly differently, but they work in conjunction with one another. So we have to make sure that as I say, we need to encourage the men. Richard put his hand up at the back. He knows about FLITE, but he's not a member, so he will be on Monday, I'm sure. No, it would be great to have
I'm very tall, I'm very sorry. The company I work for also does a lot to try and encourage a more universal outlook globally in the way that they employ people and the way that those people have careers. So I think certainly it's something that I will personally join, but also I think from that point of view, our company should also work quite closely with yours to see what we can do to help each other to improve both sides, I think.
That was the perfect answer, and we didn't actually stage that. That came au natural. So at this point, are there any questions from the audience at all about anything you've heard today, whether it be from Roberta's perspective, from Ursula's perspective, if you'd like to find out more about Ursula's organisation or the organisation she's part of, or indeed FLITE? Any questions?
As somebody who has employed females in technical positions for some time, I'm finding it very difficult to find ladies that have got qualifications. You were saying earlier that you go into schools now to promote it. Are you promoting the STEM program?
Exactly, and that's the STEM program that we're working to. But we're also trying to give a perception of manufacturing, engineering that maybe you don't see within the public domain. And I've said this before, you know, I'm a marketer, but I actually think it's really important to have marketers involved in initiatives like this, because marketers are incredibly visual people. And what we need to do is we need to, at that formative age, give a very accurate perception and to change an attitude, to change an opinion of what manufacturing or engineering or science is. I'm fortunate that I've been into some wonderful product innovation centres, centres of excellence, that I've been able to see the technology of tomorrow, kind of minority report stuff, and that's the impression, the perception that I leave that particular academic association with, not the image. If you go to Shutterstock right now and you type in manufacturing, where you see, you know, people putting components onto printed circuit boards, or a male-dominated environment, we show the reality of what careers are like, and we very much are advocates of the STEM stream. Yes. In fact, we add to STEM, we add art onto STEM, because design and engineering is art.
I had another thought on that is, in the United States, there's a robotics program called FIRST, and I'm actually mentoring 2 different teams. And it's a great way to get young ladies involved and to see how exciting it can be, and making sure that the teams don't stick the girls with the communication stuff. And, you know, they can wire up a board, they can build the mechanical part, they can drive the robots just as well as the guys can at this point. And you can see sort of little light bulbs going on in their heads sometimes when they finally say, well, this is really cool. I get to use my hands. I get to study with this. So that's an exciting development.
One further question. In your interaction with the schools, do you find that the educators within the schools are promoting engineering and chemistry? Do you think the teachers are really pushing the girls in that direction?
And I think that's a really interesting question, because actually that varies from establishment to establishment, so I cannot make a sweeping statement on that. But I do think there's actually an education required to the educators. And whether that's associations, companies like your companies going into educational establishments and actually helping coach and mentor the teachers. Because I can speak from experience. Actually, my big brother, who will be very pleased that I've now given him a mention, he's actually a head teacher at a very influential school in Edinburgh. He's only ever known school. He's went from primary school to secondary school to university, back to school. He doesn't understand my industry, and I have to educate him in my industry, but he talks to STEM. Okay, so I'm a guiding principle to him in that area. He's a headmaster. So yes, I think you guys have a responsibility as organisations to get into schools. And I know, Graham, in the audience, actually you do that in Nottingham in the UK. Go into schools and actually go into the technical departments. You asked the question about teachers with young girls and whether they are promoting. Yes, they are. I have seen that. I have witnessed that more girls. We're not seeing a dedicated stream for boys and a dedicated stream for girls. We're teaching the curriculum for excellence across all gender. Okay.
I think there's another tier we're missing, having worked in the industry for a long time, and it's with the people in the companies themselves. A lot of the women here are in marketing or they're in sales, and I notice a lot of the apps engineers for the companies don't have an apps engineer background at all. They don't have anything more than sometimes an English background, but they've been in the industry and their bosses need an apps engineer, and so they'll get that person, and that's the one they'll train, and that's the one they'll make an apps engineer. Well, there are a lot of really good people, not necessarily young or coming out of school, but old and experienced, who would make great engineers, who know the products, who know the industry. And I think you need to work with the companies themselves so that you can get that upper level of experience and make them the apps engineers and the trainers and get them more involved.
That's a great point, Andrea. So I'm getting the signal from the back of the room to say cut, cut, cut. So wonderful questions, great interaction. Thank you very much again. And if you do have any questions, then we are here for the next 10 minutes if you want to follow up with anything. Thank you again.